Hey guys, welcome back to the Mandala Traveler. Today I want to talk to you about one of the coolest locations in Ecuador, Quito. Daniel and I just got back from a pretty epic trip to Ecuador in May, and we spent about 12 days exploring the country. There are 4 different regions of Ecuador, and we got to see them all, starting with Quito. Now, we did some pretty crazy things that I never would have expected we would do, like eating roasted guinea pig or bugs. But we also did some really awesome stuff, like swimming with sea turtles and sea lions, seeing monkeys, riding through the Amazon jungle in the back of a pickup truck. Like, there were some pretty epic things. But today I want to focus on the first stop of our trip, which was Quito, the capital city of Ecuador. We flew in from the Washington, D.C. airport and landed in Quito around 10 p.m. at night. We flew into Quito because it is the capital city of Ecuador, and so it has one of the main airports there. So it was the perfect location to start our trip. Now, when we got into Quito at 10, it was really dark, so we really didn't get to see a whole lot our first night. But when we got to our hotel at the Rio Amazonas, we were unexpectedly treated to a penthouse suite upgrade, which was a really great way to start our trip. We were woken up at 6 a.m. by a wake-up call we did not request, but it ended up being a really amazing way to start our day in Quito because we got to see the sun rising over the city and the Cotopaxi volcano off in the distance. So we spent our first day in Quito exploring the city with our tour group. We went on a trip with Exotica Tours, and they paired us up with a local guide named Eduardo. He was absolutely amazing. He knew so much about the city, and so he took us on this really great tour through the historic district, where we got to see some amazing sights like the beautiful churches and the President's Palace and Independence Square, and just these gorgeous colonial buildings and cobblestone streets. When you're in the historic district of Quito, it really feels like you stepped back in time because everything is preserved from this other era. Now, one of the highlights of our historic district tour was getting to visit some of the Catholic churches. Quito has quite a few churches and a basilica that are open to the public as long as you're quiet and respectful. And so you can go inside and see just how beautiful and extravagant they are. All of these churches are really impressive from the outside as well, but the interiors take things to a whole nother level. There's tons of sculpture work and gold leaf and just these soaring ceilings and relics everywhere, and they're just very, very beautiful. And so I would highly recommend that you take some time to visit a few of these churches as well. If you want to visit several of these churches in one go, there's actually a street going off of Plaza Grande, which is called the Street of 7 Crosses. And it's known for this because there are 7 very beautiful and notable crosses on this street that mark religious locations, including some of the churches there. If you want to visit a few churches off of this street, I also recommend the Iglesia de San Francisco. It's just a street or two up from the Street of 7 Crosses. And then the Basilica Voto Nacional is high on a hill overlooking Quito. It costs $2 to enter, and you can climb these soaring towers. It was actually modeled kind of after Notre Dame. So if you've been there, you'll notice some very similar elements, but it has just a beautiful view of Quito down below, and it's definitely worth the trip. And finally, our first morning in Quito also included a quick stop at Patio Andaluz for a quick chocolate tasting demonstration and educational talk where we got to learn about how they make traditional Ecuadorian chocolate. And then we also got to visit a few shops and cafes just to get a better taste of the local culture. Okay, so that was day 1 of our Quito adventure. After this initial morning tour, we actually took off on a 6-hour road trip to the Amazon. We were there for a couple days before we came back to Quito for a couple more days of exploration. And on our way back from the Amazon, we stopped at one of the coolest places in the entire world, the center of the world. Mitad del Mundo is a giant monument that marks the spot of where some French explorers thought that the actual equator line was back in the 1700s. Only when the GPS came around did they find out that they were just a little bit off. So this is not the actual center of the world, but there was already a little village with souvenir shops and restaurants built around this. So they marked the actual equator line just a few hundred feet away, but this is where everyone comes to see the center of the world. Even though this isn't the exact equator line, there's still some kind of funky gravitational effects here. It's really hard to keep your balance with your eyes closed, and you can actually balance an egg on the pin of a nail head. And so it's definitely worth checking out this fun village, as well as going to see the actual equator just up the road. Okay, so the very last part of our Quito adventure was actually a day trip to the Quito Crater Lake up in the Andes Mountains. Now, I did a full video about the Quito Crater Lake a couple weeks ago, so if you want more information, be sure to check that out. But I couldn't make this Quito video without mentioning it as well, because it is one of the biggest day trips you can take from Quito. Quito is a volcanic crater lake that's known for its ever-changing waters. The volcanic minerals go through the waters and they create all these different shades of turquoise, blue, that are just absolutely gorgeous. It makes for an absolutely awesome hike. It's very strenuous, but definitely worth it, especially because if you can get all the way down to the bottom, you can actually ride a mule back to the top for $10 per person. Highly recommend. One of the highlights of my trip. Now, besides hiking into the crater lake, there's actually a small indigenous village at the top of the crater that you can look around, you can shop, eat some really great food. I actually stopped to feed the street dogs, and it's just a really cool look into life of the people even further up into the Andes. It is about a 3-hour drive from Quito, but the drive is completely through the Andes Mountains. It is worth every second, and it will be one of the biggest highlights of your trip if you go, I guarantee it. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope that I was able to give you some good insights on things you can do in and around Quito. It's just an amazing area and there is so much to see and do. If you want more information about visiting Quito, I have a full blog on 9 free and cheap things you can do in the area. Some of the ones we talked about today are included, but there's also some information on additional hikes, some nightlife, museums, things like that, different ways to explore the city beyond what we talked about today. If you like this video, please do me a favor, give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more content from me in the future. And I hope that we'll see you back here soon. Bye!